Call the meeting to order. Start the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Can I have a call in the roll, please?
Councilman Norris.
Here.
Councilwoman Wilson.
Here.
Councilwoman Thies.
Here.
Councilman Morris.
Here.
Councilwoman Weger.
Here.
Councilman Thompson.
Here.
Councilman Loudermilk.
Here. Thank you. Next up, we have the corrections to the journal for the preceding meetings. We have the February 2nd Sunshine meeting and the February 9th regular meeting. If you would, note any corrections that need to be made. State those now. If there are none, I'd entertain a motion to accept. If there are no comments or questions, I would ask for a roll call vote, please.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Councilman Norris. Councilman Norris.
Aye.
Councilman Thompson.
Aye.
Councilman Loudermilk.
Aye. Motion carries. Next, we have public comment. There was no correspondence through email. Moving on, communications from elected officials, other officials, or agencies of the county. We have a presentation regarding highway and GIS, engineering. All right, there we go. We're all set.
Mr. President, members of the council, Larry Robbins, County Engineer, Highway Director. I have a few people here with me tonight as well. Commissioners are here. I believe you all know them. I do have some members of my staff, though. Bob James, my Highway Superintendent. Bob Jones, my Maintenance Superintendent. Scott Barber, my GIS Director. Neil Costello, my Assistant Engineer. And then Rusty Meyer, my South Unit Supervisor. So if we have any questions, I think we were fully prepared to answer those if you have any. I will try to keep this high level, quick as I can. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I just want to give you kind of a 5-year or a picture of where we're at, where we're going, and some of the things that you can anticipate seeing from either Highway, GIS, or the Engineering Department in the coming months this year or maybe even years future. So a little bit of background. About a year ago, through previous commissioners and previous council as well, I assumed operations for the highway department. So we combined engineering highways departments. We also created then a GIS department, which the county did not previously have, a separate department entirely devoted to GIS. So that's just a little background there. We've been operating that under a year. We're nowhere near where we want to be, but we're moving in the right direction. So first thing I'd like to talk about is personnel. There are going to be some changes coming down the pipeline for CDLs, the requirements of those. You will be required to graduate from an approved school and be educated for CDL before you can get your CDL license. So that may make CDL drivers somewhat of a premium to get in the future. So that's something I'm trying to keep my eye on to make sure that, you know, we do have a little bit of a turnover in the highway department. I want to make sure that we keep a workforce there that's able to do the jobs that we need to do. So looking at those into the future, trying to keep that, maybe looking at maybe a tiered separation in pay going forward. CDL drivers maybe a higher tier, and then non-CDL drivers a lower tier. So we're also looking at some equipment because the CDL requirement really trips into effect when we are working on snow removal and things like that. We need to make sure we have that coverage so that people can drive our tandems. We can get the routes plowed and everything. So The other thing is training, both professional and safety training as well. The professional training, I think it makes us more efficient in what we do and make sure it gives a better quality employee out there on the road doing the job. So we looked at, and then safety, if you do change operations and things like that, there are always safety issues to be aware of with that. We want to make sure we're keeping our workforce safe and professional out there. Facilities is another big area that we need to look into. The facilities, we kind of inhabited hand-me-down facilities over the years, so we've kind of adapted our uses to those as well. Crew areas themselves are in need of some work up north. They're pretty rough. We have insulation falling out of the ceiling, things like that. We don't have a lot of room, especially now with some of the COVID protocols we've implemented and things like that. So space is always a necessity when we're doing anything like that. So down south, it's a pretty small building there down there as well, and we have half of our workforce down there. So it is something we need to be aware of going forward. The other thing I'd like to look into is post buildings to cover the equipment. All of our equipment right now predominantly sits outside in storage, so it's exposed to the elements. Sun, is just as hard on that equipment, some of those plastic and those fiberglass as rain, snow, sleet, and hail are. So those are something I'd like to look at in the future. So developing a plan for that in the future, that may be something we work out, some kind of facilities plan going forward. Material storage is always needed, but we're going to revamp some of the things we do, and we like to identify those and be able to stockpile some of those materials so we have those available to us readily, so we don't have to go get those in a critical time when we need those. So having areas for that would be beneficial. And then something in particular I'd like to do for the south facility is install a wash bay to keep some of these trucks clean. Right now we're coming out of the winter months. It's pretty harsh on our equipment, salt, sand, everything. Gets up on there, it's pretty corrosive. So I'd like those guys have ready access to a wash bay. They can get that material off there. So they don't have to bring that equipment all the way up north, and it wastes a lot of time. So anything I can do to make us more efficient is something we want to look at. So I've also, facilities-wise, I have a Rose senior design team looking at our entire site up north just to make recommendations on modifications and to that effect. So that is something we are getting some free help on that. So that's something that we have been looking into. Asset management, this is something that I've tried to put a focus on in my short time here so far. We have utilized a PACER rating system, which is basically a rating system from 1 to 10 for the roadway system itself. That groups those into categories. 7 through 10 is good. 5 and 6 are in that fair category, and then anything 4 and below is considered poor. We continue to utilize the community crossing matching grant program with the state. I know some of you may not be familiar with that, but the council has pledged $1 million out of EDIT to match that, and that is a 50-50 match. So that goes a long way towards us being able to maintain our roads and being able to improve the infrastructure that's out there. And I'd like to continue to focus on total right-of-way improvements. That includes when we go in to do a resurface a road or do any road work on that particular roadway. We look at improving the drainage, guardrail, if there's any to be replaced on that roadway, signage, stop signs, pavement markings, the whole bit. And that way, that's a true finished product when we walk away from it, and not just something that we're going to have to come back and revisit. Next, this is a 5-year pavement asset management plan that we submit to the state. That continues to keep us eligible for community crossings. And this has been a commitment that we have tried to adhere to the best we can. And that is basically 30 miles for each of those zones. So 7 through 10, generally a crack seal is a general accepted treatment for those roadways. We'd like to continue to do 30 miles of that. If we can do that, that improves those roads from possibly a 7 up to a 9. So that would help continue to improve our roadways and keep that moisture out of that subgrade. We'd like to do 30 miles of chip seal work and 30 miles of overlay treatment as well, so for some of those poorer roads. So any road that's in that category, and that road schedule is going to change year to year. We had that real hard freeze there in February that really deteriorated a lot of our roadways. So we've got to relook at what we're going to do this year just to get by, to improve some of those roads that have blown apart. And I know there's a lot of them out there that we haven't got to, so I apologize, but it is We do have 820 miles of roads to maintain, so it is daunting trying to keep up with that sometimes. Continue on asset management, bridge maintenance plans. We're working on developing those as well. That would include cleaning the bridges and the structures, as well as clearing around them so they can be visible, and also working on approach work. I mean, I know it's sometimes it's pretty frustrating. You come up that bridge and you get that big dip there at that approach, so that throws a lot of drivers off and can cause a lot of accidents in bad weather. So that's something we'd like to make sure that every one of our bridges are in good shape. We also utilize these plans to try to apply for rural funding. We get a dedicated amount of funding through our MPO for our urbanized area, but those rural areas are also eligible for rural funding, so that's something I would like to continue to try to apply for. We could usually get a couple $1 million grant, in the future years to do that. So, and then we also developed a small structure database this year. So bridges are anything 20 feet span and over. Small structures would be anything 19.5 feet and under at that point. So we have a database down to about 4 feet. We had a consultant come in and do that. What we need to do now with some of our data collection is get in that 4 feet and under category. We've got some 2-foot box culverts out there that are in the bottom of ravines that are probably 20 feet deep that can be just as much problems as, a 4-foot or a 5-foot pipe. So next thing we'll talk about is fleet. So we have an aging inventory. It's something that's been a focus in the past. It needs to continue to be a focus in the future. We talked about some of our future needs as a group and going forward, and this, I believe, is the biggest impact or fluctuation within my budget as far as highway goes going forward. So these are things that I would probably come to you more often than not to ask for money to try to repair some of these or get these things up to date. So I'll step through this pretty quick. These are some of our crew trucks. You can see some of the shape that they're in. These are typically hand-me-down trucks that come either from supervisors or other departments that are still worthwhile, that our guys utilize to go out and get the mowers or things like that on the field or do their job. These things are approaching at least 20 years old, most of them. What we'd like to replace them with is something like the blue Dodges that we have now, the 4-door. We get out of we get out of COVID hopefully, and guys can start riding around together again out the job sites, and we can hopefully eliminate some of those trucks and go down to the crew truck sizes like this, where 4 or 5 of them can get around, pretty easily. So this is our old Great All from the South unit. This is something that we purchased, that the county purchased in 2008. It was 10 years old at the time, so it was a used piece of equipment. It served us well, but it does cost a lot in maintenance costs every year. So this is something we'll be trying to phase out. We have another one for the north unit that we utilize up there, and we purchased a brand new one last year, and when we are making payments on it now. So that is the one that's going to phase the other one out. So once there's something critical that goes wrong with the other one, right now it's operational and functioning, so we have all 3 of them out there ditching right now. But once that becomes more of a hindrance or a bigger issue arises with that, then we will phase that other Great All out. Tractors, mowing is getting ready to be a hot topic here coming up here in the spring, so that's something we always got to struggle to keep up with. We have 4 of these old John Deere tractors that are probably older than Commissioner Schweitzer, so we just a little caveat there to throw in at you. One did catch fire last year, so it is kind of a total loss, so it's out of service. We also have 2 John Deere mowers. Those are also about 20 years old. Important thing to notice to mention on those is those are open cabs, so you are exposed to the elements. So that is something that the guys complain about going forward. So we do have 4 boom mowers that are available. Those range in years from about 5 to 15 years old. So those are still in decent shape right now. So we still continue to utilize those. We have a lot of problems with those arms, but that's the things we're trying to work through. These are the tractors. We are purchasing 4 new Kubota tractors to add to the fleet this year. These are going to be equipped with Tiger sidearm mowers. This is something that I'm going to be asking to lease the actual purchase of the tractors, just to facilitate us paying for that and not hurt our budget so much, but we are gonna pay for the mowing equipment. But those will be those do have closed-in cabs, heat, AC, so we can also mow in the elements if it's raining or something like that. Those guys can also be out there doing some mowing, so we don't have to really do real good finish work. We just really need to knock the brush down, so. We get into some of our 1-tons that we utilize now. These are a little tricky. We kind of overwork these for what we use. Sometimes they double as crew trucks. Sometimes they double as getting equipment out of there. So we have quite a few of these that are anywhere from 5 to 15 years old themselves. This one in particular is pulling a hot box. That is pretty much the upper limits of its capacity as far as towing that. So it's working that truck pretty heavily when we're out there patching and doing those kind of things. Our single axles are primarily used for snow removal. They do take a beating during that snow removal season though. We use those to get into smaller subdivisions and do some of those side roads. We do have a lot of the beds are in disrepair. They are all to approximately in that 5 to 15 year or 15-year-old inventory at that point. So here's a picture of one that actually went down over this last snowstorm. So it was they actually just got it up today. So these things can be pretty labor intensive and pretty problematic to get back on the road when they do go down. The beds are all in rough shape. Those are something that we're going to have to talk about replacing and utilizing those as well. This is a picture of an F600. We are purchasing 2 of these with a grant from Solid Waste. I believe some of the council knows what I'm referring to there, but this I'm hoping will take the place of a single axle and a 1-ton. So I'll be able to replace 2 pieces of equipment with one, less maintenance, and hopefully better use. Hopefully it won't, these are 22,000 pound axle ratings, so they shouldn't be worked as hard as what the 1-tons are. Plus they'll pretty much do almost everything that our single axles do. So like I said, the single axles sit a lot of the year, which really isn't good for these trucks. They need to be out moving, making sure everything's working and functioning, and this will allow us to do that. So in the future, if these 2 that we get work out for solid waste, we utilize those to pick up any kind of solid waste on the road. We also utilize for any other operations, but that way, if they do work, then that's something we'll build in the budget in the years to come. So there's an old backhoe. It's about 99, I believe, so you're 22 years old on that one as well. A skid steer that we have, that's a 1 skid steer unit that we have, so north and south both have to share that, so that gets worked quite a bit by both units. So in the summertime months when we're doing spot milling or butt joints or cleaning up while getting ready for paving, this thing goes pretty much all summer long. So we do have 4 graders. We primarily use those for material handling on our facilities, but we do also use those if there's any storms, any kind of bad weather that we've got trees across the road, anything like that, we'll send those out and then we'll push those off to the side until we can get back and take care of those at a later date. We do have 5 graders as well. This is our oldest grader. It's an Army surplus grader. That Army surplus website is something that we may be able to utilize to get some of these fleet needs taken care of in the future, but getting on that and making sure that equipment is what we need is another thing. So we did get 2 new graders last year though. The price tag for both of those I think was around $300,000. They do pretty good work out there, and we do have about 155 miles of gravel roads to maintain, so they come in handy for that. It's our excavator. This is purchased about the same time as our backhoe. So we use this for large projects, those large pipe projects that we're redoing. We do a lot of that stuff in-house, which does save the county quite a bit of money versus a contractor contracting it out. The only downside is that does take us some time and eat into other things that we do, but balancing that is always a key, and this has been a critical piece of infrastructure here in the past to try to get things done. So we do have 2 mini excavators, 2 John Deere mini excavators that we also utilize for those small projects. This would be drive pipe replacements, small ditch jobs, or anything like that. So those come in handy quite a bit. And then we do have 1 street sweeper at this point that is currently underutilized. I would like to develop more of a plan to be able to utilize that. I'd also like to get an additional one for down south, so that one doesn't have to cover the whole county. They are a fairly expensive piece of equipment though, so trying to find those and replace those, that's something we're going to have to work out going forward. So. I'll get into, I'll try to do this pretty quickly. This is an estimated 5-year fleet plan going forward. I've listed the new equipment budget that I put in there in local road and street across the top. I know some of it may be hard to see, but that is $400,000 every year towards purchase of new equipment. The Volvo trucks that were purchased over the last couple of years, there's a picture of them up there on the wall there, all the ones that we have available to us now. So the 5 that we recently purchased, we're in that $1 million category. I show that across the top there. Those will be paid off in that 2025 year. Those helped out tremendously over the winter here. We didn't have near as many breakdowns as we had in the past. So I think it allowed us definitely to be out there on the road more doing our job rather than working on equipment. So that's the important thing going forward. I think it translated to a better service this winter with the snow removal and everything. The new grade all, like I mentioned, that we purchased, that's a almost $89,000 lease over the next 3 years. So we'll make our first payment for that this month, and then 2 more payments the next 2 years. That will be paid off in 2023. The tractors I would like to lease as well, $65,000 spread out over 3 years. I looked at different options about leasing everything or just purchasing the mowers outright. When I purchased the mowers outright, it really just zeroed out my equipment balance in my budget this year, and that we have a lot of needs right now, and it's hard to really do that. So the interest rates we were getting were under 3%, so it's an opportunity right now that we can utilize that. It doesn't cost us so much to kind of push that dollar down the road a little bit. We will purchase the mowing equipment for those tractors outright. That is $110,000. So. Crew trucks, like I talked about, I put some of those replacements in the next 2 years at $60,000 a piece. That should get me about 2 trucks per. I can get them usually between $25,000 and $30,000, just depending on what the market is out there at the time. The backhoe, I think it's adequate. We can push that out to 2024, 2025. We have some vendors that will let us split those payments and do 2 equal payments kind of at the end of a budget season, so we can kind of utilize that where we don't have to lease that as well. And then we do have some use, like I said, some of those V-boxes and that brine equipment for some of those single axles. Brine equipment is something that I would like to focus on. We didn't really do a lot of pre-treatment this year because we didn't have those capabilities, but I'd like to focus on that next year. So it may eliminate us from having to go out at all and save some manpower on the back end. And then I'd like to look at, we are getting a skid steer with that solid waste money as well, for that, picking up that debris as well. So we'll have that utilized. I'd like to get an additional one for the south unit. That way we're not trucking that thing all over the county and double working it. We can hopefully get those and they'll last us a lot longer. The excavator is something I think we're going to look at replacing, but I pushed that out towards the end of that 5-year plan. There is an asterisk with that. It would be a 3-year lease starting in 2025 of approximately $60,000. There are approximately 180 to 190,000 new. So depending on what that is, that's kind of just a placeholder number at that point. And then if those F600 trucks work and they, fulfill our needs and what we need to do going forward, I'd like to get 6 of those in that 2024 timeframe. That would be a 5-year lease, somewhere at around $120,000 a year. So that's just a real quick, rough overview of the fleet plan over the next 5 years. And you can see some of those will need some additional funds. Some of those will be okay, but our needs may change by the time we get to that as well. So that's pretty much it on highway. So I'm going to jump right into GIS. If you guys have any questions, we can talk about it now, or we can wait till the end. It's up to you guys. But
Right. I just got one question. The post buildings, are you in need of space?
we have adequate space. So what we have is, what I'd like to do is, we have areas where we park the trucks now. A lot of these are diesel, so they need to be plugged in. So we have a row of plug-ins that they hook up to at the end of the day or in bad weather when it gets cold out.
Right.
All I want to do is cover those.
Right, okay. But no need of space, new space? or
Nope,
anything?
don't need a new space. We
Great.
just need to cover those.
All right, thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
All right, well, we'll move on to GIS. So focus on some of the accomplishments. I mean, GIS was implemented in the county in 2004. It's really been underutilized for that entire time. First thing we really had to do was recertify our road mileage with the state and identify what roads are actually ours and nail down that. How much miles do we actually have to maintain? So we did that. We come out with 820 miles of road. That's all. We do now have a road centerline file, and that is basically the base map for everything else that we are going to do with GIS. So that was critical to get that done. It took a lot of time. I applaud Scott for his effort on that, because it was a lot of trying to figure out what roads are ours and which ones aren't and everything else, going through Commissioner record book and everything else. So. Bobby James was critical in that as well, because he has vast knowledge of this county from about 50 years. I'm not sure how, but he does. Road ratings, this is what we currently utilize. Some of those are, sorry, I skipped over. So the other thing with GIS is we maintain the parcel base map for the auditor's office as well. So we've been working with them. I know they have a new system now, so they're learning a new system, but that's something when we created the GIS department that we pledged that we would fill that need for them for plat mapping. So that's something that we continue to do and continue to make headway on. We are utilizing this Art Collector app for the road ratings and some other layers, but this road ratings, really the important thing there is in 2016 we paid the county paid a consultant about $70,000 to rate all the roads in the county. Scott set this up on the Art Collector app. Bob James, Mark Hopper, and Rusty Maurer, my supervisors, went out and rated every mile of roadway on their iPads that we purchased them. So they did that within about a month. So if you figure their salaries into it, the purchase of the iPads themselves, we got that done for about $15,000 versus the $70,000 to pay a consultant to do that. So I want to continue to do that every year so we can get a better handle of where our roads are and what they're doing every year. The state only requires us to do it every 2, but I think if we can do it within a month's time. I've also got other iPads for some of the other working leaders. I'm going to work on getting those trained on that PACER rating system, so that time will come down as well. So we'll be able to do that hopefully within about 2 weeks. Every year we'll be able to rate roads and know kind of what's going on in real time out there. We also have a drainage layer that we created. It's kind of just now getting started on that, but the goal with that is any drainage complaints that come in, any problems that people have with the right of way or anything like that can be documented in a geospatial form. We can go out there, we can rate those, we can make sure we take care of the worst ones first, and if there are some that aren't as bad, maybe just down the street or around the corner or something, we can take care of those while we're there. Future goals for GIS, we definitely want to expand on some of the field data collection we're doing. I like to do the pavement markings, traffic signs, street lights, mowing layer, grading layer, guardrail, and speed limits as well, because we have a lot of infrastructure out there, and I think Bobby James is the only one that knows where it's all at. So we just need to make sure that we're taking care of everything while we're out there, and make sure that we're not letting anything fall into disrepair that's something that we can't take care of. So. With the mowing and grading as well, it'd be nice if we can utilize that on a map so the guys know when they've mowed, when they haven't mowed, what sections need mowed, if they missed one, if they need to go back, or what happens, because everybody makes mistakes. Everybody skips over something. Nobody does it on purpose, but even though contrary to the public's belief sometime, but it does happen, and this is just a way we can eliminate that. We would like to ensure we have a GIS component for future software that we purchase, whether that be online permitting or any work order management software or something that we develop for the highway department or anything else. I would like to develop some online resources, which would be some snow maps, mowing maps, construction project maps that we can put out there to the public so people know what's going on, and where they can plan their route a little bit better. And then we also continue to like to use this in other departments. We're working with the surveyor's office right now to implement for their section corners, so they have that data out there in the field. They don't have to call in the office anymore and have somebody look that up for them. They have all that data at their fingertips. We also maintain the zoning map for area planning right now, but one thing we need to look at is the future flyovers that we need. The assessor's office is just coming out of the end of their contract with their flyovers, so we'll have to look at that going forward and how we fund that and how that gets taken care of. So, any questions on GIS? Right.
I'm just
Marcia.
wondering, Larry, if you're being sure that Bobby is healthy and has good
I try to
outlook on
take
his
care of
long
him.
life.
I try to make sure he's just drinking water, nothing out of the ordinary.
Vitamins, yeah. Health insurance is
Yeah.
all intact.
We're still working on downloading him, so we need to make sure that he stays with us. So, all right, we'll move on to engineering. I basically want to just touch on the current projects right now. Spring Hill Phase 2 will go to a letting here in May, so that project will start this year. We do have 2 parcels that we're working on acquiring, but we'll get those done next week. The big thing that you may see here coming up in the next couple of weeks, there's 94 trees along that corridor we have to have down by April 1st. So there'll be a lot of work going on down through there, probably starting later this week. So we do have a contractor on board for that, and that will be coming down. So that is widening that section from, so Spring Hill Phase 2 is from 7th to Canal. That is widening that from a 2-lane to a 3-lane section. That'll hopefully eliminate a lot of those rear end collision type accidents that we have. This was the highest accident corridor in the county when this project was selected. Clinton Road Phase 1, we are currently selecting a consultant for that. I need to authorize that. We have the consultant selected, but I have to get the state's blessing before we move forward. These are both federally funded projects through the MPO. Clinton Road is the highest, the second highest rated corridor, accident corridor in the county. So we looked at options along there. We're widening that stretch as well. The current recommendation is a 3-lane facility with shoulders and a pedestrian bike path off to the east side. And then we're also looking at some intersection improvements of a signal on at Hasselberger. Jumped ahead there, sorry. Bridge 322 and Bridge 337 are both bridge projects that will let late this year. Bridge 322 is 13th over Lost Creek, and 37 is Farmersburg over Terman Creek. These are both in my bridge program and are scheduled to be repaired and replaced. Bridge 322 is an historic bridge, and so is 37. But 37, we're only doing scour work, so public won't see much on that one. But Bridge 322 is a superstructure replacement, so that one will be shut down for a while. So Bridge 77 is also an historic bridge. It's French Drive over Prairie Creek. That is an old iron pony truss bridge that we are going to relocate into Prairie Creek Park over the water there to a pavilion, and they'll build a new bridge there. That is slated for a fiscal year 2024. Bridge 330 is Holman Street over Thompson Ditch. That will be laid. That'll be several years down the road, but it is something to mention. It is in the hopper for on the way now. So future projects, we've got 3 bridge projects mainly coming out of there. Bridge 205, which is Hasselberg over Otter Creek. That'll go to design this year. We'll figure out kind of where we get the funding to construct that after that. Bridges 310A and B are probably going to take priority. Those are Fruit Ridge over Lost Creek. Those are 2 separate structures, even though they look like one, but they are load posted at this point. The industrial park people kind of flipped out when I had to load post that because they didn't know how they're going to get their trucks at their facilities, but calmed them down for a little bit. They're okay, but I do need to get those replaced, so those are up to date. Bridge 317 is College over Thompson Ditch. That's the last bridge along Thompson Ditch within the city that is scheduled to be replaced. So, and then we have Clinton Road Phase 2 will be coming out in the future years, and also Rosedale Road Widening, which is the 3rd highest accident corridor in the county. So those are pretty high profile projects we're going to look at. In Rosedale, we're looking at just widening, probably adding some shoulders. A lot of the crash data along there was vehicles that left the pavement for whatever reason. Maybe they were impaired, maybe there was deer crossing, something like that, but it is pretty narrow. So there's not really much of a recovery zone, so that's something we want to apply on there.
County Line Road, is that the one?
No, Rosedale goes north from Mill Dam.
Okay.
Oh, wait, yep, up through Sandcut.
Well, I had some people asking me about County Line Road. Who's
Which
the
county
cost
line?
with that?
It depends on which county line. It could be Yeager, it could be Dearborn, Yeager, and and then there's a couple of miscellaneous projects that I have earmarked. For those of you who don't know, we will be maintaining, the state is going to relinquish 40 to the county, and that is US 40 from Bennett Lane west out to the state line there. And there are 4 bridges we'll take in with that, along with the road mileage. But in particular, I'd like to look at the intersection of Thorpe, where the signal is. That's the turnoff for the high school and also the consolidated elementary school. It's a lot of traffic, PM traffic, AM and PM traffic. So that's something I'd definitely like to look at improving. And then the other kind of pet project that I have that I'd like to look at is Haythorne from 41 to 13th Street. That's something that I believe needs widened to 3 lanes. We have the Menards facility on the north side there that gets quite a bit of truck traffic. I'd like to level off that railroad crossing that is just to the west of there, so the trucks can feel like they can go out to 41 and not either go through the city or come down Haythorne or go up 13th. So.
Larry, on 40 West,
Yep.
that 42, like the Stone Lodge there?
Yeah, Ileana, I think. That's
Yeah,
the
to
cutoff.
Ileana?
Yeah.
Oh, you already got it down.
Yep. Yeah, so the state, that was originally part of the contract for the county getting 641, which was in the late 90s. Basically, that agreement said that when 641 was done, the county and the city would both take over US 40. Now, that took an extended amount of time to get that done. The state did do a lot of work out there. They did some reconstruction work on the roadway. They replaced all 4 bridges. There are some small structures that still need to be replaced in the future, but they are good for now. But the state did pony up. They have offered us $250,000 to take that over now since it's been so long. That will basically pay for a chip seal project and some minor fixes for some of the drainage out there. So
You know that Toad Hop down off 40?
that's another one of those miscellaneous projects.
That rascal is bad.
Yep. So, and we had a semi go off there about a month
Yeah.
ago, so, that's something I think we can take care of. If I can lengthen that culvert out, I don't really want to widen the road, but I would like to widen the shoulder.
Shoulders
That
what
way
needs
those
it,
trucks
yeah.
aren't falling off
That's
there and
happened
everything.
more
Yep.
than once, yeah.
Yep. Any other question?
I've got one real quick.
Sure.
Clinton Road, Phase 1.
Mhm.
Where is that to? Where's that stop?
That goes from Park Avenue to Hasselberger. So it will include the intersection of Hasselberger, but that's kind of where that cutoff
That's where it
is.
stops. And then Phase 2 from there out to
Phase
the
2,
highway.
yep, Phase 2 from Hasselberger up to the 41. Yep. Yeah, Chris just mentioned that it's worth mentioning, right now I have 200 bridges in the inventory that I have to maintain. I get not quite $1 million a year to maintain those. To replace one bridge is $1 million, so yeah, kind of gives you an idea of what that number is. With 40, I'm gonna get 4 more. Just got one for the overpass there on Margaret, and gonna get another one, with the overpass work the city's gonna do there at 8th Avenue and 13th Street, so.
Have you thought about playing the lottery?
I could, I mean, we could get a lot of tickets for that, but yeah. That's something, you kid about that, but there is some investment opportunity with that Cume Bridge Fund. And that's something I'd like to talk to the treasurer about in the future, but, it's something that me and Calissa have discussed before. It's just how we get that started and everything, and, making sure we have that money available. But with some of the projects we've been doing, I also pay for, culvert replacement out of that Cume Bridge Fund, which is, some of those larger structures. So we've kind of been eating into that cash balance the last couple of years, and I'd like to kind of take this year as kind of look where we are. That's why I got a lot of the design going this year, so I can kind of see where we're at construction-wise going forward.
Thank you.
Any other questions about projects? I'm sure there are more I left out, but, I apologize if I skip over anything that I meant to say, but it's a lot to cover, and I'm trying to get it as quick as I can, so. Next thing we'll talk about is right-of-way permitting. We did this year, we became a member utility for 811. It does cost us about $6,000 a year to do that. That is something I had Scott help me with to set up. That does 2 things. It allows us to know what work's going on in our right-of-way. So we know who's out there, who's working, when they're gonna be out there and everything else. Make sure they have a permit, make sure they're doing everything properly. Make sure they're not tearing up anything they're not supposed to be tearing up. And at old culverts I've came to that we've come to, and I've got a phone line through the middle of them or something like that. And if they don't know they're there, I can't really go back and tell them they need to fix that. For the most part, utility companies are pretty reasonable. When they do hit those, they'll come back and relocate them, but we may not catch it at the right time, and that may develop a sinkhole, and that's a danger to somebody else. So that's something we need to eliminate. So I think that's worthwhile for that. Right now, I've kind of, absorbed that into my current budget, so that doesn't really affect anything going forward. But the other side of that is I'd like to update my permitting ordinance and the fees associated with that. That is something I'll probably be coming to the council later this year to talk about. Our fees I wouldn't consider them low, but they're not exactly high either. So they need to be covered. The one thing that I'd like to do is install some penalties or some fines associated with doing work without a permit or doing work, buying a permit for something and then doing something else. So, not that it happens often, but it does happen, so. All right, lastly, what I want to really just briefly mention on is revenues. COVID kind of impacted MVH and local road and street last year. 3 months of the year there, we had a reduction in our revenues about 20%. We kind of rebounded from that. Everything has kind of plateaued out and returned to normal. You know, I use normal loosely, but it returned to normal. Our revenue rates are back up to where they were pre-COVID. People still are driving around. I don't really foresee too many people staying home anymore, unfortunately. But as long as they continue to purchase fuel, we're going to continue to get money for MVH and local road and street. So that's really the way those boil down to. That 20% reduction we did kind of absorb. It kind of ate into that cash balance that we had available in that fund. So we'll be 2 years trying to build that back up. But I think, you know, with a proper plan and following it, I think we can get there. So permits, like I said, if we redo those, excuse me, it's definitely something that could be an additional revenue stream for us. I can't remember off the top of my head how much I collect in permit fees every year, but it's getting more substantial every year. So, I mean, my engineering budget was funded half through Edit and Cume Bridge before, and we're reducing that quite a bit every year. Cheryl, do you remember how much those are? I can't remember.
It goes around 70. You
Yeah,
mean as far as what you're
Yeah, what
taking
my
from
permit
us?
revenue is.
Oh, what your current revenue is?
Yeah.
I haven't.
I can't remember. I should have looked that number up, but
Probably got it.
I think it was 40. It was 40 before, and then I had a year that went up to about 80 or 90. But we had a couple large. Joink was a big part of that. Joink was boring fiber everywhere, so they were a big part of that. So thank them for that. But it continues to. We continue to get other infrastructure coming in. We had another fiber company that came in and did fiber work from basically county line to county line, north to south. They were connecting Duke Energy generating stations. So. That was a big permit fee in itself. I think that was almost $40,000 in itself. So those things are, will continue to be a revenue stream for that department, and that helps basically pay for my permit inspector and making sure everything needs to be done on that side of it. Edit is something I'm not sure if we exactly know how COVID is going to affect that or not, but I think that's something we all need to work together. These projects, are fairly entailed. I will have, come budget time, I'll have a more detailed estimate on what these projects cost, because all of these projects have professional fees associated with them. We got design, then we get into construction, possibly land act depending on the project, into construction, and then we also have inspection on the tail end of that. So those are all things we have to fund through edits. So those are all things we all need to understand and be on the same page going forward. I think commissioners, council, myself as well. So we just need to make sure that we have those fundings to keep those projects on track, and we figure out how COVID's maybe possibly going to affect those going forward. So the capital improvement plan, I think, is something that we need to establish, and is something that's in the works. I don't know where we go with that next steps or anything, but I think that's definitely something that we all should be interested in and seeing how that forecasts how that money is going to get spent going forward. So with that, are there any other questions? I know I covered a lot. I tried to do it quickly. I'm sure I left something out, but if there's anything you guys like to talk in detail or anything else, we can.
Any other questions or comments from council?
I have just one real quick. Larry, have you guys come to a final decision yet on the Clinton Road? Like, I know I went to the community meeting on that. Is that still in the works?
So the corridor study, you're referring to the corridor study,
Uh-huh.
the meeting we had. The corridor study is not finalized yet.
Okay.
We're still evaluating those public comments. As of today, the recommendation is 3-lane section, small shoulders with that
Which is the
8-foot
one that was
trail
kinda
associated
sticking
with
out.
that on the east side.
Okay.
That's something I think people definitely were interested in, was the pedestrian component of that and keeping that separate. There are a lot of people that walk and bike up through that area, so it's definitely something we wanted to keep separate. But like I said, that any day now I should get some of that final draft for that those public comments from that, because we left that open for a period of time because of COVID. So they're incorporating that in the final report, and when I get that, I'll be sure to share it with you through Alyssa.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Very detailed, and we
welcome.
appreciate the information.
Sorry it took so long.
Well, that's good stuff. It's well thought out. I appreciate it. Any other communications from elected officials, other officials, or agencies of the county? Appears there are none. Reports for standing committees. There are none. Ordinance relating to appropriations. First up, we have request to council 2021-009 ordinance establishing sex and violent crime offender fees and fund. It is joint ordinance 2021-02. We heard this request last week from Mr. Burns with the Sheriff's Department, and Chief Deputy Fell was here as well. Mr. Burns is in attendance tonight if there are any questions from him. If there are none, I would entertain a motion.
I move that we pass ordinance 2021-02.
Second?
We have a motion on the floor by Councilman Wager, second by Councilman Morris. Any other thoughts, questions, comments?
Maybe on to it.
There being none, we will have a roll call vote.
You want me to do it, or you
Sorry. Councilwoman Wilson,
Aye.
I'm sorry, excuse me, Councilman Norris. Aye. Councilwoman Thies,
Aye.
Councilman Morris,
Aye.
Councilwoman Wager,
Aye.
Councilman Thompson,
Aye.
Councilman Loudermilk.
Aye, motion carries. Thank you. Next up, we have the salary ordinances that were requested by County Dispatch. As you recall, we had salary ordinance 2021-03, 2021-04, 2021-05. That was, all three were requested council 2021-007 lit PSAP. Just for the record, Ms. Oster has withdrawn the salary ordinance 2021-05, which is the third ordinance in that list of ordinances. So the third one, 05, was the change in pay request. So 03 was to delete one civilian shift dispatcher position. I think, is it misnumbered here on these? I think, when I recall, 4, I believe that's how. So just to be clear, the request that has been withdrawn is for the stipends. And last week we heard it is 2021-05. So the two requests that are before us are the deletion of the one supervisor spot and the addition of the regular dispatcher position. So those are two requests before us this time. Any questions about that? So for the first one, 2021-03 salary ordinance, the deletion of the position. I'd entertain a motion. We have a motion on the floor by Councilman Norris,
Second.
second by Councilman Thompson. Any questions or comments?
And tell us what we are voting on this time.
Again,
Again, just in one sentence
deletion
of the
of the
ordinance.
supervisor position.
Got it.
Any other questions? Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Norris. Aye. Councilwoman Wilson.
Aye.
Councilwoman Thies.
Aye.
Councilman Morris.
Aye.
Councilwoman Legger.
Aye.
Councilman Thompson.
Aye.
Councilman Loudermilk.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. The next one is 2021-04. It's a salary ordinance. As I said last week, we heard it as the addition of the one civilian dispatcher position, Pole B position. If there are no questions or comments about that, I'd accept a motion at this time.
That's what, but it says here that 3 assistant supervisor title.
Just got crossed up this week. I was just going to operate off of what we discussed last week, so it's consistent with what we did last week. I think it was just
Typo.
yeah, I think if we just
As
go
long
with
as
what
we
was
got it
presented last week.
in
So
the motion.
2021-04 will be add one dispatcher civilian Pole B position. That's how it was presented last week.
And that's the motion.
I don't, I apologize.
Here's what it was last week.
Let me see.
Here's what we are this week.
Okay. So she's got the motion on the floor correctly.
Yeah, it was 04, so we can.
Travis, did you
05 to
second it?
04, so they can sign the correct one.
Not yet.
Can amend 05 then to, or
Oh,
make it
good.
to 05, which she withdrew.
So we good to? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep, okay.
I'll double check it.
I'd like to move that we approve salary ordinance 2021-04.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor by Councilwoman Wilson,
I'll second.
Got it.
second by Councilwoman Thies. Is everyone clear what we're voting on here for 2021-04? We're adding the civilian Pole B position for dispatcher. Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Norris. Aye. Councilwoman Wilson.
Aye.
Councilwoman Dees.
Aye.
Councilman Morris.
Aye.
Councilwoman Legger.
Aye.
Councilman Thompson.
Aye.
Councilman Loudermilk.
Aye, motion carries. Thank you. And as I stated, the previously presented salary ordinance 2021-05, which was the stipends for the three assistant supervisors, has been withdrawn, so we won't hear that tonight. Moving on, salary ordinance 2021-06, request of council 2021-008 reassessment. We heard that last week as well. Are there any questions or comments? Mr. Gardner's here, if you have anything. If you recall, it was concerning the compensation change for the PETA members. The proposed change is to $150 daily allowance. Any questions or comments from council? If there are none, I would accept a motion. Six. Yes.
I'll second.
So we have a motion on the floor to accept by Councilwoman Wilson, a second by Councilman Thompson. Any questions or comments from council? Having none, ask for roll call vote, please.
Councilman Norris. Aye. Councilwoman Wilson. Aye. Councilwoman Dees.
Aye.
Councilman Morris.
Aye.
Councilwoman Legger.
Aye.
Councilman Thompson.
Aye.
Councilman Loudermilk.
Aye, motion carries. Thank you. Next, honorary resolutions. There are none. Resolutions relating to fiscal policies of the council. There are none. There are no appointments to make at this time. So with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn by Councilman Norris, second by Councilwoman Wilson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you, Bobby James.
Karen, just make sure they sign the right one, and we'll amend that top, and I'll double check it. I've got to head to the hospital. Okay.
Well, that was a bunch of numbers.